In this moment, from 0 to 100%, how important is romantic relationship in your life? Whether you are single or seeing somebody, how important is that? That's a question I want to explore. And if you want to, put your percentage from 0 to 100 in the comments section. I think it's something that varies greatly. And I want to explore it by first looking at some extremes. The extreme of 100% and the extreme of 0%. At 100%, sociobiological theory states that everything that motivates us boils down to whether we think it's a desire for fame, power, attention, fortune, whatever it is, it's all motivated at its core by having children. This is a biological kind of genetic predisposition that people have, which basically keeps life going on the planet. And obviously, it's worked. There's a lot more people here now than there used to be, so it's working on that level. I like to think of sociobiology as explaining our tendency, but not our destiny. And if there is something other than just, having children, what is it? I think it is about existential purpose. Existentialism is largely about one's meaning in life, or what meaning do you make of life. And I think that there is a spiritual purpose in the sense of a mission that we come here to work on. It can be a personal karmic thing, or it can be something that we are here to contribute to the world, to others. And this can take precedence more than pure sociobiological drives, more than just the desire to find a romantic relationship and have children. There can be other things that are important in our life. And I think that because the population of the planet is so great, there is a kind of zeitgeist going on in which we're moving towards our individual purpose. And a lot of people that are in relationships may feel like they wish it was more rewarding. It's not living up to expectations, and either they think another person would provide more fulfillment, and maybe they would. But a lot of times what may be missing actually is the presence of oneself, the connection to one's own groundedness in purpose and meaning. So, sociobiology says 100% importance on romantic relationships, that if you're in one, there's a certain degree of satisfaction that you're in one, but there might be a drive towards another one. And if you're not in one, then that's the drive for everything, that you won't be happy until you're in one again. Which ties in with another kind of 100% thing, which is the psychological tendency towards codependence, in which you emotionally are not feeling individuated and whole and complete, and so you have a tendency towards enmeshment with another person, so that you feel something, so that you feel a certain kind of aliveness. And that can come from basically not going through the process of finding yourself and connecting with your own purpose. And so if you are somebody with that tendency, then it might be good to take a break from relationship and go to the other extreme of 0% importance. And you won't want to, but by making yourself your primary interest for a while, that can allow you to find a certain identity that will allow you to remain present and be able to set boundaries when you're in a relationship again. But that takes some work to find yourself. Obviously, on the spiritual level, that is what it's all about, finding yourself. The spiritual level, in certain ways, has almost a completely opposite meaning or drive than the sociobiological drive. It's not just about creating other life. If you're on the spiritual path, it is about creating your life and finding out what your life means. So there may be some people on the spiritual path who just have no interest in relationship. And this is an extreme. I mean, people like Gandhi, still had marriage, and still had a relationship, despite his very strong focus upon non-individual relationship issues, more global and cultural concerns. So to be spiritual does not mean, to negate all relationships, but it might mean that you have to take a break from relationships to find yourself more clearly, and then better understand the purpose of relationships once you have a better identity, a more clear identity formed. And so the percentage of 0 or 100 are, of course, extreme. So, is there a perfect balance? Is the balance 50%, 49%, 51%? What is perfect? I don't think it's really something that's static. I think it's something that changes. And it could be that sometimes when you're single, you really want to be in a relationship, so it takes a lot of your energy to focus upon that. But that could just be stemming from loneliness and a sign that you haven't come to peace with yourself. And there might be times when you're single that it has rather low priority and you're working on your own thing and, forming your identity, you're working on your career or whatever, and so it could be low at that point. And there could be times where you're in a relationship that it's very important. You could be going through something in which your connection with the partner is extremely important, and there needs to be a lot of contact, dialogue, connection. Or it could be that both people are going through their own individual thing, and they're still connected, but focusing on their individual pursuits as well while they're together. So it could vary. It could be 20% at one time, 80% at another time. Another form of really low percent importance would be somebody who could be like a workaholic, or another kind of fear of emotion, kind of, fear of being connected to another person kind of identity. So it could be that they're even in a relationship, but it's maybe only 5%, 10% important because they ultimately are afraid of being known and seen. Maybe their family, they witnessed a lot of abuse or cruelty in emotional terms, and so they don't want to go there, so they're in a relationship, but they don't really want to be connected to another person, so they kind of emotionally disengage and don't participate even if they're with somebody. So that's another form of low percent, which, is in the unhealthy realm of things. I think there's obviously opportunities there to work on trust and vulnerability and being known, if that's the case. So things vary for an individual as to how important a relationship is. I think that 49% is a number that came to me when I was reflecting upon this as a kind of, overall balance. When you take all the different numbers, whether you're single, whether you're in a relationship, if you try to not max out over 49%, that can keep things in balance. And you might say, well, 50% is balance. But it's kind of like, if there's how much of a company do you own, in terms of stocks? 50% you get a say, 49% you don't really get a say. And no matter how much we care for somebody, they don't get a say ultimately in terms of who we are. They can contribute, and we can include another person in our life and our purpose, but that little cat issue. Ultimately, if we go over 50% in terms of the importance of another person, then that symbolically can represent a loss of self. Now, what is the purpose of a relationship? That can serve a lot of purposes. On a superficial level, it can just be like, somebody to do things with, or, somebody to pair with and do all the things that couples are expected to do. On a deeper level, it can be about mirroring, finding someone who's capable of being an emotional mirror and help you understand yourself better. And a strong friend, somebody to share with and to process with and to be known by. These are all very important things. On the side of like extremes towards moving towards 100%, I think commercials and cultural messages and romantic comedies, these kinds of things can give you the impression that it's maybe 90-95% importance. But it's really not. These messages are driven more by consumerism and using your drives, your biological and emotional drives towards selling you something, whether they're selling you a story or selling you a product. But, it's hard to ultimately quantify, but 49% comes to mind as an overall balance, even if it's higher or lower sometimes, because you want to keep your own presence. And even though there may be that drive, especially during, courting, to say that somebody is the world to you, means the world to you, and is everything, that's just appealing to somebody's biology, basically, or emotional enmeshment. But it's okay for yourself and your connection to your spirit to remain primary, no matter what situation you're in. That doesn't lessen the importance of a relationship if you keep your own presence the primary importance in your life, because I think ultimately people respect that. If you see yourself as more important than any relationship, if you see a relationship as an enhancement to your life but not your purpose for being, that shows that you're not just being driven by loneliness or biology. It shows that you have a presence of self that's solid and comfortable, and that you can put relationships in perspective. That doesn't mean you don't value other people. It's just that you recognize that things may change. People may change and no longer be compatible, or they may find another relationship that fits better. But while you're together with somebody, remain connected to yourself, and you won't be afraid all the time. I think that if another person is more important than yourself, then it's like living in constant fear, because that person might choose to judge you, that person might choose to leave you, that person might fall in love with someone else. And so you can fall into constantly trying to manage the situation by modifying your personality and behavior based upon what will give you the feedback that you desire. But ultimately, that's a very shaky way of being. So keep things in perspective, and if you feel like it, share your percentage in the comments below. Thanks.